Earlier this year, I reviewed a final generation Chevrolet Impala. This week, I look at its direct competitor, the 6th generation Ford Taurus. 2018 Ford Taurus Limited All-Wheel Drive, another victim in the age of the sedanocalypse. The Ford Taurus was one of Ford's longest-running and beloved nameplates. Sure, it's not as sexy as the Mustang, but the Taurus had been in continuous production since 1986, until its end in 2020. A 34-year run for possibly Ford's greatest and car. The first truly modern front-wheel drive mid-size family sedan, or at least for the Americans. The car that wrote the playbook on what I'd call the dad sedan. But by the time it got to this 6th generation, the Taurus had taken on a new role, Ford's car range topper. This car was the direct replacement for the beloved Crown Victoria, a body-on-frame, rear-wheel drive large sedan that somehow meandered into the 2010s due to it being the de facto police and taxi choice for so long. But a car like the Crown Victoria was never going to survive into the new millennium, let alone in the 2010s. So for 2005, Ford introduced a large front-wheel drive sedan intended to eventually replace the Crown Victoria, the 500. The Ford 500, to say the least, flopped upon arrival. It was bland, it kinda had that chunky mid-aughts Ford interior that skated them near but not quite to bankruptcy, and it had a name that was kind of a mouthful in more ways than one. Ford had intended to call it the 500, as in the number 500, as a tribute to the Galaxy 500s from the 60s. Large full-size sedans with big engines that every boomer looked fondly of, that Ford had hoped that such nostalgia would drive sales for the new large sedan. The name also fit a naming convention that William Clay Ford Jr. had demanded that every Ford sedan start with the letter F for Ford and every SUV start with the letter E because, I guess, Explorer? But even before they could launch it, Fiat came forward with plans to use the number 500 nameplate for a reborn city car for Ford's eventual return for the American market. So the spelled out 500 became the name of the sedan. And it didn't sell. By late 2006, Bowen CEO Alan Mulally replaced William Clay Ford Jr. as CEO, struck down the flopping nameplate convention, renamed the 500 into something with a little more modern cachet and brand recognition. The Taurus. While this was all going on, the 4th generation Taurus has been phased out in favor for the Fusion. That model was doing okay since it didn't need a rebrand, although being a 5th generation Taurus would have made sense for the time. Instead, Ford renamed the 500 the Taurus in hopes to kickstart sales for that thing. It didn't really work, as the now 5th generation Taurus was still a fundamentally boring car that was somehow still even more forgettable than the 9th generation Chevrolet Impala. So much like Chevy would do with its Impala, Ford would reinvent its full-size sedan with actual style and road presence. Introduced in 2010, the 6th generation Ford Taurus made you immediately forget that the 500 even existed. Sitting on the same Volvo-designed D3 platform as the previous Taurus/500, its styling actually had styling. It was such a departure from the ho-hum car before that Mulally stated that it was the car that we should have built from the start. You had two engines to initially choose from. Either the 3.5-liter Duratec V6 out of the old car, or the new 3.5-liter EcoBoost V6 in show form. Oh yeah, Ford also brought back the show for this car. Shows were the sporty variants of 2nd and 3rd gen Tauruses when Ford put Yamaha-designed engines in them, so it was only natural that the 365 horsepower variant of the large sedan would bring that name back. And either engine would be attached to some variant of Ford's 6F automatic transaxle. Also available was all-wheel drive, which was a big selling point that this car had over the Impala, which was front-wheel drive only. For 2013, the Duratec would get updated and rebranded into the Cyclone V6 and would produce 288 horsepower and 254 foot-pounds of torque. Unlike the previous Taurus, the new ones would only have one platform mate. Mercury had gotten the axe for 2010, so no sables here, and the Freestyle/Taurus X crossover that was essentially a lifted 5th gen Taurus wagon would get the axe as well. Instead, Lincoln's MKS would continue on as Lincoln's range topper over there. Moving on, this is a very well-equipped large car. Ford didn't set out to sell 400,000 of these like they had with Tauruses of old. No, instead this new range topper Taurus was always meant to sell around 40,000 a year. Unless you were to go Expedition or King Rancher or Platinum F-Series route, this was meant to be the top Ford you could get. These weren't meant to be volume sales killers. Instead, Ford set out to sell the best large sedan they could at the time. And I mean, they kinda nailed it. In its purest form, this is just a full-size front-wheel drive sedan that any grandma would be proud to be behind the wheel of. Heck, it's just a Ford. But compared to the smaller Fusion, this was a lot nicer inside. I mean, everything's pretty much power everything in here. Power steering column, power mirrors, power pedals, power seats with multiple saved settings. The materials and fit and finish honestly feel the best they could be without going on full luxury. This is a really nice large car to be inside of. And as nice as the 10th generation Impala was, it kinda paled in comparison to the 6th generation Taurus. And that's on top of this car beating it to the market by a couple of years. The Impala honestly felt like a big Malibu. Not bad per se, but its specialness kinda stops at its beautiful exterior styling. The Taurus, however, backs up its range topper status by actually providing a well-executed experience inside that had many people double-taking and asking, wait, this is a domestic American product? And this was right after the Great Recession that many people felt burned by American cars, so this was a nice surprise. This is the kind of effort that helped Ford stave off bankruptcy. Unlike GM and Chrysler, where build quality plummeted and lineups bloated and everything just kinda crashed in on itself, Ford's biggest failings were that their late-aughts products were simply born and felt dated upon launch. Not the 6th generation Taurus. It actually feels like a product that Ford put their best foot forward on, which is something I can't really say about the 10th generation Impala. That just felt like another big GM car at the end of the day. This, you can actually feel Ford's effort here. On the road, it's fine. Just fine. It feels like a large American sedan, and that's honestly all it needs to be. The Cyclone V6 feels fine, it provides smooth power delivery, and honestly I don't feel the 6F automatic transmission at all, which is all it needs to be. It's kind of floaty, and that's exactly what I expect out of a large American sedan. The suspension soaks up the bumps well, again, what you would expect out of a large American sedan. The steering does feel kind of floaty like you would expect in a large American sedan, and that's something I give credit to the Impala over this. That car felt a little more direct, as it felt like it drove just like its smaller Malibu counterpart. This, however, feels like a car aimed at people who haven't really expected more from driving dynamics since the Reagan administration. I wouldn't necessarily call it bad in the context of this car, but it was a comparison I couldn't help but make. You do feel its size, though. The 6th generation Taurus does have some high haunches, and the nose does feel like it commands tight spaces like an SUV would. But again, large American sedan. Having a big road presence is almost mandatory for a car like this. This 2018 Ford Taurus Limited all-wheel drive is owned by my wife Tori's grandparents. It's her grandmother's car. They bought this new in upstate New York in 2018, and it's followed them down here to North Carolina when they moved here shortly after. It's been driven less and less in recent years as they enter their twilight years, which explains the 20,600 miles at the time of filming. Part of them driving it less and less is that it's kind of hard to get in and out of. The seating position seems kind of low, so you kind of fall into the car after falling into it, and you kind of have to pull yourself up to get out of it. My Malibu and the Impala don't suffer from this as much as the seat kind of aligns with the bottom of the doors better, so the transition in and out of the car is smoother. With older people, ergonomics are everything, and ergonomics are a big reason why I went Malibu over Fusion. And this Taurus has those ergonomic hiccups that I didn't like in the Fusion. Just a personal preference. My biggest thing personally is, like the Fusion, the Taurus feels kinda claustrophobic inside for such a large car. That's kind of my feeling for Ford interiors for the last 20-ish years as a whole. They just feel a tad claustrophobic for my liking. I know this is a much better interior over the Impalas. It's better constructed, the materials feel a lot nicer than the Impalas, but I honestly like the Impalas more because it feels more airy and spacious inside, which is what I expect out of a large car like this. And that's honestly most of car buying in a nutshell. The car can check off every box for you, but if it just doesn't vibe with you when you sit in it and drive it, you find more and more reasons to get rid of it earlier or let it sit. Anyways, in 2013, the 6th generation Ford Taurus received its mid-cycle refresh when Ford incorporated its kinetic design into its new face. In 2014, a 2-liter EcoBoost Turbo 4 became optional on SEL and limited models, making it the first 4-banger available in a Taurus since 1991, which is a fact that kind of surprised me considering that Ford's competitors have long kept 4-cylinder engines as base engines in their mid-size cars. And Ford's new Impala made the 4-cylinder engine a big part of that car. But like that final generation Impala, the big Taurus was already living on borrowed time. Ford had always intended that the Taurus be a range topper aimed at around 40,000 sales a year rather than being a pure sales tour de force like earlier Tauruses. And initially, they exceeded those sales targets. But the market was shifting. People were spending their money on SUVs and crossovers more and more, because honestly, if you were going to spend just a little bit more money on an edge, then you would have something that's infinitely more practical. And for a large sedan, that's hard to compete with. It doesn't matter that the trunk is big. The Edge and Explorer offer an infinite more cargo space. The Taurus may be available with all-wheel drive, but the Edge and Explorer's more ground clearance and higher seater positions gives drivers a better sense of security that a sedan just doesn't deliver. And with the sedan apocalypse upon us, the Taurus was a part of Ford's giant swing of the axe for the 2019 model year. The Focus was already dead, but 2019 saw the death of the Taurus and the Fiesta. The Fusion would follow in 2020. And that's how we've reached 2024, where the only car Ford produces is the Mustang. I don't know if Ford will ever sell consumer sedans again. Profit margins demand trucks and SUVs, even if Ford struggles to launch them with the Bronco's horrific slow launch and the 6th generation Explorer's constant build quality issues. But Ford seems to be happy with their lineup at the moment, and that's honestly sad because Ford sedans were an American institution. Like apple pie and baseball, the Ford sedan was simply a part of the fabric of America, and now they're gone, just like that. 2018 Ford Taurus Limited All-Wheel Drive, the last hurrah for the large Ford sedan. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you once again for watching another episode of Wookie Drives. If you have a car or truck you'd like to see on the show and happen to be in the Charlotte or Mooresville, North Carolina area, email me a submission of your car to wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's right, submit your car to wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's wookiedrives@gmail.com. Don't forget to give the video a like, drop a comment with some feedback. Any sort of interaction with this video really helps small channels like mine grow in the algorithm. Share with all your Ford Taurus friends. And finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell for notifications for more videos like these. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.
When it comes to racing, Ford likes to play it safe. It's all part of winning for you. Take the '99 Ford Taurus. Safety cell construction, 2nd generation airbags, anti-theft system, 4-wheel anti-lock brakes. But most important, Taurus becomes the only car under $20,000 to earn a 5-star front crash test rating. But we didn't stop there. Ford Windstar also earned a 5-star safety rating.